Brenda. Sorry, I look pretty greasy. I'm here in a hotel room. And I put coconut oil in my hair. Um, yeah, so to just for the sake of not having to type so much, I have double-handed injuries, and also just texting takes forever. So right after I lost my job, which I was pretty much over anyway. I mean, it was on me that I was taking on so much, but I was so I was getting off of work so exhausted that like I could barely drive back to my parents' house in La Jolla. And so I wanted to go show up to my brother's wedding. I didn't want to miss out on any other events. I didn't go to his college graduation, and yeah, I made my amends a long time ago to my family, probably 12 years ago at least. But more important than anything else is I've been really consistent about still wanting to continue to show up for them. Even at times, when it still feels really uncomfortable for me, I feel like even despite not having continuous sobriety, um, I don't let that get in the way of my ability to still live by the principles of the program. Um, so yeah, it was cool going. We went to Red Lodge, Montana, and when I came back, I was driving from Point Loma to OB. Was taking the same route I usually took right after work. I was taking it upon myself when I was still working at Alpha Project to take all this food that they used to just throw away in the dumpster. We're talking like 10 dozen bagels or 20 perfectly good meals. They would just dump it. And so I would just tell my supervisor, look, like I'm gonna go to the beach anyway, just cruise by, check the waves. Might as well just throw it in my trunk. And so during that time, like I was working from 3 in the afternoon till like 11:30 at night. Um, and so I'd be getting off of work and going down Sports Arena or Midway. There would always be like drunk people, or this area by a strip club. I can't even tell you how many times I saw accidents. And also, I mean, it's a given. Friday or Saturday night, there's just at a certain hour, there's a lot more people kind of driving recklessly. So I figured that it was probably only a matter of time before someone hit me. But I was pretty cautious. That being said, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I lost my job, I took the same route, only not having a job anymore, that I used to take from work to go to the beach with my then boyfriend. And this girl ran the red at West Point Loma in Sunset Cliffs and plowed right into my car. And I could tell just based on trying to drive my car that the damage to my car was pretty bad. And her car was barely touched. She was probably like young 20s. I pulled my car over in the gas station. I could just feel like my car was like internal parts just dragging on the ground. And I was so stressed out. I knew I had only collision. I had taken a pay cut to work at Alpha Project because it was just something that I felt was really something that I was more congruent with what I was interested in finding out more about. As far as prior to working there, I had briefly worked as a patient transporter at Sharp, and it was not for me. Like medicine, too sad. Not to mention just other things. I've lived in my car before, and I just figured it'd be a natural fit. And so I had gone from having comprehensive. It's just one of those things, Like I feel like every single time I've ever had AAA, I've never actually had to use it. And then the second I've canceled it, that's when like shit hits the fan. So, but this girl, she ended up lying to her insurance. My insurance claimed that they actually sided with me because of the nature of the damages. The damages to her car were minimal. She had lied and said that I ran the red, but she had no damage to the side of the car that would have affected her vehicle. But long story short, my car ended up getting parked in front of my parents' house. My dad was a little weird about it. Almost immediately, my parents, specifically my dad's been like this for a really long time. Almost right away, he's like, "What did you do?" And I explained to him and said, no, actually, this girl was at fault. I called him right after the accident, but regardless, he almost immediately went and got my car fixed, but he took the keys and I was pretty much cut off from my car, despite the fact that the car is in my name. So leading up to this though, right before I started working at Alpha Project, I had one of my front teeth literally just fell out of my mouth while I was jotting down notes, sitting outside a thrift store. I planned on going inside this shop and vets to go see if I could find some new scrubs for work. And my front tooth literally just fell out and a rush of blood came out. So about, I'm sure you remember this, about, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, I was in a bike wreck and I had my nose ripped off. I had my face caved in basically. So I had plates, but more importantly, I had literally teeth scattered on the sidewalk from the impact from the sidewalk. It was just a head-on collision. So my maxillofacial surgeon, right after the bike wreck, pretty much said, you know, there's going to be two schools of thought. There's going to be some oral surgeons that say, just take all your teeth out, get them replaced right away. And then there'll be some that just say, you know, just see how your teeth hold up and then treat them accordingly. And so right after my bike wreck, I mean, it took them 2 years to put a nose back on my face. And so that was priority number one. But beside that, I mean, I come from a family of 5 kids. It wasn't feasible for me to go and expect my dad to pay whatever amount it would cost to suddenly get all these implants. And so that was not even something I considered. Even though my family has the money to do so, I wasn't going to put them in that position. So immediately I just said, well, I'm going to write it out. I'm going to see how my teeth do. Why would I just get my teeth ripped out? It turns out that my teeth are fine. But over the course of like 10 years, I had so many root canals, and eventually those root canals turned into extractions. And then I would say 3 or 4 years ago, that was when the tooth fell out. And then between that time and about a year and a half ago, my teeth were just in a state of disrepair. I was seen by my dentist for cleaning still, and he pretty much advised my dad, he's like, you need to get her to a major restorative surgeon and just get all the teeth worked on, because this is continuing to be a problem and it's only going to get worse. But my dad's kind of a cheap ass, even though he and my mom have more money than ever. My mom inherited half the property after my next door neighbor died, because they were really close. She was an older woman. And so literally, like, my mom inherited probably like at least $1.5 million. My dad's a retired physician. So finally, after this stuff happened, I mean, when I was getting ready for my little brother's wedding, I was literally brushing my teeth, and no matter what I did, my teeth just kept falling apart. I lost another half of my front tooth. This one is completely gone, and like, while brushing my teeth, another half of my front tooth came off. And it was starting to look really bad, and even more important, eating was becoming really painful. And so I figured, hey, might as well make the most of all this free time I'm gonna have. For one, it was still summertime, so I was like, I can go to the beach. I tried not to panic, you know. I was like, shit, I don't know, I'm gonna have any money, but I was like, fuck yeah, like I had been working my ass off. And so I was like really actually kind of looking forward to going to the beach and taking some time off. And then I had all this free time, and so I thought, you know what, now's a good time for me to put pressure on my dad and try to see if I can get him on board to support me financially to get major restorative work and get my teeth worked on. And that was October 11th of 2024. So my dad and I consulted with doctors in the US. They quoted us at somewhere between $80,000-$100,000. And even though my dad seemed willing to pay it, my dad had already helped me with probably $40,000 to $60,000 worth of different treatments related to my teeth over the past 10 years. I was the one that made the suggestion. I said, you know, you're a doctor. He helped my siblings with all these other surgeries, but he has his connections. He could call around, and I said, why don't you call your doctor friends and see if they can find a surgeon in TJ? And so I didn't have the heart to cost my family more money. Even though my family, they're doing well, they work in medicine, whatever. Again, it's just that to make up for all those times when I was not a very considerate person. I never know if something were to happen to my siblings, if they were to suddenly be in a crisis. I didn't want to be someone that, you know, took up more money unnecessarily. And so my dad asked around, and we got referred to this surgeon, Dr. Bogren, and he was working on a TJ. So around October of 2024, we met with this surgeon. He seemed totally legit. He referenced that he did have experience working in maxillofacial restorative dentistry, and he seemed like a nice enough guy, very charismatic. And so within a few weeks' time, we started going through major work, meaning my dad did not trust me to drive the car down there. He became really weird about the car thing. To his credit, he had gone ahead and gotten the car fixed, and he just said that, you know, I'll release the car to you once you can pay me for the damages that he paid for out of pocket. It was just kind of a weird thing. Little did I know that was just the beginning of a whole nightmare that I never ever anticipated my family would put me through. So there were some red flags. For one, when we were meeting with the American surgeons, they were discussing work that would be stretched out over the span of a year. This guy started to knock out work that he expected would be done within 6 months' time. And so from the beginning, I would go through what he called one surgery. One surgery would be like 3 extractions, 4 root canals. Mind you, during this time, I mentioned to my dad, I said, during the consultation, I said, he told both of us that all I would need was Tylenol. I've had root canals, I've had extractions. And my dad assured me, he said, oh, don't worry about it. I have painkillers at home, like I will make sure that you have everything you need. And so after the first surgery, I noticed another thing. After you have an extraction, normally a dentist or an oral surgeon will have you bite on gauze. Otherwise, like, the blood literally will not clot. And so there were all these like things that were kind of red flags for me, and I mentioned that to my dad, and he said, oh, next surgery we'll just bring our own gauze. And so he was just like, not a big deal, whatever. And I've never had major restorative work done, and so I just went with it. I was like, again, trying to stay in gratitude and just trying to get through this. But it was hell. I started going through surgery. I was going through surgery every 2 weeks. And at that velocity of, like, that intensity, we would, his office was really strange. We would schedule an appointment for 9 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we wouldn't be seen until like 2 o'clock. And so literally we could get there in the morning and it would be dark out by the time we were driving back to the United States. I was in so much pain, and almost right away also my dad completely went back on his word. If I didn't ask for a painkiller within like the first 4 hours, he would just refuse to give me painkillers. He'd say, oh, you'll be fine. And so I was barely eating, and I immediately, from the beginning of the surgery, I went on a soft food diet. So we're talking applesauce, cottage cheese, maybe string cheese, if that, soup, protein shakes, pudding. There were very, very few things that I could eat. Like, for me to cook during that time, and that's if I wasn't in a shit ton of pain, I would like soak bread in tomato sauce and then melt cheese, and that was like dun dun dun, like that was pretty much my go-to meal. I was grateful for that, but it kicked my butt. Um, After like the first month or so, my dad eventually let me use my car to drive to Mexico and back for my own surgery, and that was when things took like a really, really fucked up toll or turn. I was going through surgery. He started procedures. He did lidocaine and whatever, and he started drilling on me. And I raised my hand because I told him in English and Spanish. I told him I can feel it. And so he's like, oh, no problem. And he administered more lidocaine right away. Went back to drilling. And I raised my hand again. I could feel like all the drilling. It was agony. And so he administered more medicine, and then once again, right away, immediately, he didn't wait for the medicine to kick in. And I just said, fuck it. I've been through painful shit before, and I wrote it out. But I went through hours of surgery in which I could pretty much feel the whole thing. And I just did my best to like picture the ocean, and it was really pretty messed up. And I remember towards the end of that surgery, I don't remember how long it lasted. It just seemed like it was probably 4 or 6 hours. I had tears running down my face. I remember towards the end, I was so pissed because I remember him turning to his assistant, and he saw the tears and he commented, he's like, she's tired. I think we should save the rest for another day. This guy ended up being like one of the most manipulative con artists I've ever encountered, but he charmed the pants off my dad. My dad is a retired physician. Just so happens that my dad, one of his best friends, is in memory care facility, and his other friend is dealing with health stuff, and his family pretty much threatened to sue him in court because of things related to a COVID vaccine if he made any efforts to contact his other best friend. So my dad was like in a vulnerable place. He and my mom both kind of fell out of touch with their two closest friends. And so they've grown like increasingly codependent. And also my dad recently retired. Well, a family friend of ours sold their tequila company to Costco. And they threw my dad a few bottles of tequila. And so now he and my mom now routinely drink tequila every night since he's retired, and he also doesn't know what to do with himself. That's become like their new thing, which is whatever. You know, I've had my time, and so I don't really trip on what my family does or doesn't do. But this surgeon he was charming. He did weird things. My dad was driving me to surgery and back, and literally he'd be performing surgery on me, and my dad would be like standing over me, and the surgeon would, there was a complete lack of boundaries. My dad, the surgeon would be like, here, come here. My dad would literally be like standing over me as if he was assisting the surgeon, or he'd be talking to my dad instead of, I don't know, just doing his job and performing surgery on me. And he would literally stop performing surgery to show my dad these special cases of patients he had treated. He'd go on his computer, pull up x-rays, and my dad loved it. He had my dad eating out of the palm of his hand. It fed his ego, and again, he was very charismatic. But after that surgery, by the time I got home, I was in so much pain, but it was dark out. I don't remember what time I got home, and it's been such a clusterfuck since then. I talked to my dad in the morning, and I explained to him, look, this is what happened, and, you know, it's not normal. He didn't stop. And I don't know if it was that surgery or the one after that, but my dad immediately became enraged, and he said, if you don't appreciate my support, get the fuck out of this house and go fix your own teeth. By this point, I had an entire row of teeth gone. I had what are called bone grafts, things like below my gum line that had already been initiated, I couldn't just stop everything I was doing with the surgeon and go expect to continue care with a different doctor. Not to mention, the only reason I entrusted my dad with help with the surgery was because I didn't have the money to pay for it myself. This is my dad. My dad, when my brother had his shoulder injury, he got the doctor that worked on the Padres pitcher to fix my brother. My sisters, but two of them, they had torn ACLs from soccer. And so this was my dad's response. He didn't just say it, he screamed it. And I don't remember like what my immediate response was, because there's been so much that's transpired since then, but basically over the course of like the next few months, things just got weirder and weirder. I had almost all my teeth taken out. The doctor became increasingly condescending. He and my dad would kind of mock me. I would bring a list of questions regarding, you know, what are the next steps in the treatment plan, because it got so confusing. Because the different types of work that were being done on different areas of my mouth. Plus, I have a memory disorder, so I would bring like a list of questions, and this guy's attitude was pretty much like, your daughter's so dumb, like, why doesn't she just let us doctors talk? And it was such disrespect, but I felt kind of trapped. My dad refused to let me switch care, and yeah, it was around, so for like months, I got used to fixing this guy's work. I would have to treat my own infections because this guy, he started messing up. I had a whole row of teeth missing, and he made what's called a prosthesis. It's a temporary row of teeth that was supposed to stay, and the damn thing would not stay. So I went from looking like a crackhead to feeling like $1 million. Like, only it wouldn't stay. This row of teeth would not stay, and it was humiliating. I could go from talking to someone to having this row of teeth dangling from my mouth. In 1 week alone, my dad was just like, you can drive yourself back down to Mexico. But the surgeon would find a way to always like blame it back on me. He never once took responsibility. And I started to record the surgeries. I started documenting everything from almost the beginning, namely so I could keep up with like where I was at as far as what procedures I had to still go through. Never in a million years did I think that later it would become possible evidence that I'm still not sure what to do with. Anyway, yeah, it just got weirder and weirder. And then around March of last year, I lost motor function in my left hand from hand drilling my teeth in. From October to March, things went from bad to worse. Both of my parents basically reverted back to being really abusive, non-textbook domestic violence, abusive towards only me, doing really weird shit, saying strange things about me to the family. They told the entire family, they played this really good victim role. They said that I had a really bad attitude, that I was probably high on drugs, and they played this victim. They're like, Jessica's so ungrateful, and my siblings, they just went with it. And I can see how, you know, truth is stranger than fiction, but also, you know, you reap what you sow. Even though I've been showing up for my family for like 12 plus years, my parents knew that my history precedes itself. Mind you, I worked as a behavior specialist for Poway Unified for almost 10 years. I single-handedly ran a homeless shelter for over a year, and it was my dad who had a problem when I was bypassing what my coworkers were not doing. You know, we'd run out of food, we'd run out of water, we wouldn't have blankets for new clients, and so I essentially went against our company's policy. Never heard back from the CEO. He was too busy traveling, golfing or something. And so I went against like our company's policy and did donation drives. I figured, hey, my parents live in La Jolla. I might as well use their address as a way to bring in whatever things we didn't have. And so but during that time, my dad literally intercepted like this next door post that I put up, and he said, I don't want my house looking like a homeless shelter. And I ignored what my parents were saying. I found like some sort of middle ground. I continued to do my best. I was doing way too much. So I pretty much already quit Alpha Project before they even fired me. But anyway, my family, my siblings, once things started going wrong and my parents started complaining about me doing X, Y, or Z, or kind of insinuating I was living like this double life where I was saying one thing and then taking off, and I don't even know what they said to my siblings, but my parents used to be very abusive people, like, but it's been 30 years or something since they acted in this manner. You know, growing up, my dad was very physically abusive. My mom was physically abusive with one of my sisters, and then I had an uncle that lived with us for many years that molested most of my siblings. Pretty much everyone of my 4 siblings got molested by my uncle. I was the only one not affected by him, but my parents have done things to me, only me, in the past year and a half or 17 months that they didn't even do when we were kids. My dad put a tracker on my phone, he put a tracker on my car, but basically, I was left, like at times, literally starving. And when things started getting even worse, I could no longer fix my teeth. It was humiliating. I didn't know what the hell to do. My parents pretty much said, go ahead, call the police. Oh yeah, we're abusive. They knew, Brenda, the sick thing is, they knew this was not a textbook domestic violence case. And so I couldn't just call the police. I'm a recovering meth addict. My dad's a retired physician with the Ocean View. I knew how that 911 call would go. They would show up, he would say, meth? Even if my teeth were gone from a bike wreck? They would go, no problem, Dr. Whitney, non-rent paying tenant. Let us take this trash out of your house. And my parents both played that card as a way to do this sick shit. And so literally, I still went on to fix half their house during that time. I mean, they starved, and I owe this to AA, and I owe this to my first sponsor, Marie Cross. Had it not been for her, I would have given up. I would have sold half the property in the garage. I eventually probably would have left. I would run away from that house, missing rows of teeth, and probably would have died with a needle in my arm, crying myself to death in the riverbeds. But instead, I looked at this as an opportunity to show up for my parents. My mom ended up having to leave town during the really messed up parts of surgery, and my dad went into this like depression. And I saw that my dad was like really lonely, and so I was like, hey, like, time to take a step forward and time to actively make some living amends. And so I took care of the house while my mom was gone for months because a cousin of mine died. I cooked for my dad. I worked for my dad, cleaning, fixing the house. I got him to fix parts of the house that I knew bothered him, that my mom kind of like, she's a little bit of a hoarder. I worked my ass off, and I literally at times was starving, but I looked out for him, and I did everything I could to help my dad during that time. And when my mom came back, things just got worse. And I still managed to get hired by one of the biggest nonprofits in San Diego, PATH. But I literally showed up to work for them, missing a row of teeth, and I was holding in my top row of teeth with my tongue to show up there. But I felt like I had been hired by Google. They were offering me like $28 an hour, which is unheard of for a non-college graduate. Whereas Alpha Project, I was getting paid $19 an hour. So March 26th was my last botch job surgery. That was last year. And this guy left me with such acute chemical burns, I couldn't drink water for 3 days. And yet, my dad became very irritated with the fact that I wanted to stop surgery. He considered this guy buddy. He told me I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. He told me I was an idiot, pretty much. And I thought that he was going to interfere with my ability to accept this job offer. And I ended up starting working at PATH. But it was very, very hard. I was going on, I was barely able to eat. I could no longer fix my teeth. I literally was walking out the door for my second day of training, and the prosthesis just broke in a way that I could no longer fix. And I was like so defeated, so stressed out. But again, my dad refused to let me switch care. It was the same shit. There were times when I literally just left that house with almost no teeth in my mouth, was performing surgery on myself in alleyways. I had to pull all-nighters because my parents were fucking both weird about me fixing my teeth during the daytime. And so it's been the most bizarre, effed up thing that I've ever had to go through in my life. And mind you, Brenda, like, I'm glad that you responded because I've been meaning to reach out to someone about this. I reached out to people in AA. I went to meetings while I was in garages at UTC Mall, and I just said, I'm going through hell. I'm facing homelessness. My family is, leaving me starving. I'm really struggling. I'm still trying to live, by the principles of the program, and I need help. I don't know what to do. And meeting after meeting, people are just like, keep coming back. I had my power drill, I had rows of teeth in the car. I started sleeping in my car. It's like people didn't give a shit. And so like I contacted every different organization. I found out domestic violence shelters only take you if you are struggling with spousal abuse or if you have kids. I went ahead and I let the director of PATH know about my situation with my family, and I kind of let her know. I said, look, like, I'm really honored and privileged to start here, but I pretty much hit her up letting her know, like, I think I might be in a position where I might need like a referral to get into a shelter myself. Let me tell you, I was fired the same day. So, for about like at least 2 months, I literally had no teeth. I was living off of brownie mix and canned peas, and the threats with my parents never stopped. I want to say it was around, time is so warped for me now, like August of last year. Finally, my dad agreed to let me see another surgeon, but it was someone he picked. It was this guy who had been a dentist in Chula Vista. He had graduated from Stanford. I had serious concerns about my gum line because I was still having residual effects months after the last botch up surgery. I had bones and things coming out of my gum line and just chunks of gums missing. And so I had no alternative. I literally, like I told you, my left hand stopped working. I already had a right hand injury, so I'm like handless, toothless, and still being threatened with homelessness. And for whatever reason, my dad had decided, okay, I'm gonna let Jessica see another person. I had no say in who I got to see. This guy had zero experience working with extreme cases like mine, but I figured, hey, at the least I can find out like if I'm gonna need gum grafting surgery. And this guy, his name is Dr. Torres. We went in and consulted with him. I want to say September of this last year, and right away he looked at my mouth and I'll never forget the expression on his face. He looked like who did this to you? And he told my dad, he's like, it looks like a salad. As my dad talked to him about all the procedures that had been done, this surgeon was just looking at him with disbelief. He's like, articulation, that's a method that people don't even use anymore. They haven't been using that since the 80s. But he did imaging. He did a CAT scan, and he did all these bone density tests. And the CAT scan revealed that my jaw was about to collapse off my face. And I had incurred a permanent jaw disorder, and that the surgeon my dad trusted had left so little bone on the lower teeth. I'm sure you know, as far as like having a root canal, to prep a tooth for a crown, you know, they shave around like the tooth matter to fit the crown. But this guy literally left like little jagged baby teeth. Not to mention they were like piranha sharp. At one point I had to file these things down because they were lacerating through my tongue. And so when this guy saw my teeth, he's like, there's so little teeth left. He's like, I don't even know if I can take on your case. But after considering, after he took some time to think about it, he decided to treat me as a patient. And since then, I have had permanent implants, but I've continued having problems with my parents. I have pretty much resorted to living out of my car. Over the past few months, I have ran through the last of my money. And had it not been for a former client of mine from the homeless shelter I worked at, I would have possibly died. And he helped me get medical supplies. I've gone through, my hand is agony. I now have a hand specialist. I have so many doctors on my phone. Had to go through hell. I need double hand surgery now. And it's been a living nightmare. This whole thing with my family has been the most devastating thing I've ever had to go through in my life. I finally actually reached out to extended family. My uncle, he recently retired as a superior court judge, and out of desperation, I reached out to him, actually his new wife, and just I needed to like start looking out for myself more, and I needed some sort of support. My uncle only lives 2 miles away from us, and my grandmother, before she died, she left my aunts and uncles and my dad a bunch of properties. So they, instead of selling them, they developed an LLC together. So my uncle literally pays rent to my dad. And so I guess he could have been like, hey, Charlie, like, stop starving your kid, or like, I won't pay you rent. Instead, I got a message back from his wife that said, God loves me. And that's it. So, needless to say, like, very disappointing. And I will say this, you know, I've been really tenacious. I've been doing my best, but I have reached my wit's end. I documented so much stuff. I am here at a hotel room. I've lost track of the places that I've slept in. I did most of my surgery at a place called the Heritage Inn in Point Loma. And then it was very weird. I more recently stayed at a place called the Easy 8 Motel, which was literally a place that is 3 blocks away from the homeless shelter I ran. And so here I am, like, kind of sort of newly homeless, running into former clients of mine. And I didn't tell them about like what I had going on. I'm a weirdo. I'm very conservative despite how I might come across. I just focused the attention on, oh, how are you, you know, and I have been like really struggling. One of my the people that I was friends with at Poway Unified, when I left Poway, we pretty much fell out of touch. Plus, I had to deal with a lot of political hierarchy when I was working there. And so, anytime I was, there were false allegations made against me. I guess people were threatened by me for whatever reason. I mean, I had a blue shaved head when I first started working there. I think the biggest thing is that I was just different and I was good at my job, and there were 7 different times people tried to get me fired. But to my credit, I still made it to the top of my pay grade. And every time I fought back, though, I won, but I was still the one treated like a criminal. I was transferred to a different campus, forced to start over in a different class, and nothing ever happened to people that made these false allegations against me. So I didn't really have a lot of friends when I was living out in Poway. I had a few friends in AA, and I had Buddhist friends, but being back in San Diego has been really isolating. My former best friend, she hit and killed a homeless person while I was living in Poway, and so she's all strung out. She's living in Claremont, and I've been kind of touching base with her, but just because her dad's basically dying. And I don't have a lot of friends here anymore. Most of my friends have either died or moved, and it is what it is. But not to mention my parents live in La Jolla. And Brenda, the part that kills me is that my neighbors around me, they've seen me pack up my car. They've seen me get followed to my car by my parents, who have instigated things. More often than not, it's behind closed doors, but I've made it an effort to kind of protect myself from them, even from a legal standpoint, by doing things like leaving the garage open. So if my parents want to do some weird shit or say some stuff, they'll possibly be witnesses, should I choose to take this to court. But they have never once talked to me, asked me if I was okay. And that has been just, you know, an additional thing that has caused me to go, you know what? Why the hell have I bothered to go out of my way to try to help people throughout this whole process? It seriously has fucked with me on such a level that I have been pushed to the brink of like wanting to kill myself at times, especially when I was dealing with like severe pain. I've been in the ER and been treated 8 times for my hands, but more recently I went and I had MRIs done, nerve conduction studies, and so I need double hand surgery, but I still need to see more doctors. I have so many doctors on my phone right now, and the bigger concern though is that my teeth, just a week ago, I had to have a row of teeth screwed back in because they literally just like fell out. And so I have been so worried, and my dad, my efforts to communicate with him, he told me that I was a prostitute, that I was dumb, selfish, and lazy, and that the whole family agreed. My family barbecued, traveled the world, laughed at me, and the sicker I've gotten, the meaner they've all become towards me. Having been a behavior specialist, like I can see exactly what my family does. My siblings, they had COVID-related trauma, having seen people die during that time that they have not resolved. They're all alcoholics. And I don't get fazed by things that they've said. Actually, going to my brother's wedding, I found out some wild shit about my siblings that I don't hold against them. I don't use against them as ammunition because that's not what healthy people do. I found out my siblings have been stealing IVs from the hospital to treat their hangovers, and like, my family's nuts. But it's just wild because in the almost 10 years I spent living in Poway, I thought that coming back to San Diego, like, I would be able to kind of compare notes, like, this is what I did professionally, and like, to my siblings, because I care about people. We work in the helping industry. Only to find out, like, my siblings just, they make money, but they're not really passionate about it. And they've never really dealt with the trauma, the things that we went through as children. But never in a million years did I think that all the stuff that I thought was a thing of the past would come up to bite me in the ass on this level. Like, 2 weeks ago, my little sister had a baby. I was the only one in the family not informed. A week ago, my dad had heart surgery, or not heart surgery, he had surgery, but because he has heart disease, he's considered a high-risk candidate. He could have died. I hadn't been home in 3 weeks because I've been trying to adapt to full-time homelessness, which has been kicking my ass, but I pretty much run out of money. And to be on this side of things where I've still been doing all this research and stuff that on social policy, I very like fine-tuned, bullet-pointed goals in my mind of professional things I want to work towards that I can't even focus my energy on, but I still have made efforts. Some of the things are wild. Some of the things that I've looked into regarding consumer protection law, nonprofit funding, and some corruption stuff involving our local police department. I've continued to do my best at trying to stay focused on my health, but you know, I still have my passions, and lately I've just been getting my ass kicked because it's been depression, and if it's not depression, it's been dealing with chronic pain that I don't take medicine for. I've had to go through more horrible shit with these doctors that have been so dismissive, but I'm only 2.5 weeks away from finally meeting with this orthopedic hand surgeon that I think will be finally, like, maybe a light at the end of the tunnel. But this has by far been the hardest thing I've ever been through in my entire life. My family has never once apologized. I made efforts to talk to both my parents about the things that have transpired, and my parents have only gotten weirder. Literally, at this point in time, I can say that they're both like sociopaths. My dad's in such grave denial. He got ripped off for over $35,000. He still called this guy Buddy after the CAT scan results. The first words out of my dad's mouth after the CAT scan revealed my jaw condition. My dad looked at this doctor. I was so embarrassed for him, Brenda. And he said, "Sounds expensive. How much is this going to cost me?" And, you know, I haven't done anything in retribution to my parents, but what I can say for sure is that I have lost it as far as how far my parents have continued to go out of their way to harass me. I don't know what to do anymore. My faith in so much has been, like, shattered. And despite everything, I've been trying to, like, take things one day at a time, but trying to sleep out of my car it's not a feasible thing. I have been very humbled because I thought I had some semblance of a clue as to, you know, what people out there that are completely homeless struggle with, but not only do I have a better sense of it, I don't want to know more, but on behalf of the poor of San Diego, like, I am so disgusted by the level of discrimination that still exists between people. You know, for educated people, like, I have gotten my butt kicked, but it's also brought me a lot of insight that I otherwise never would have gained. So, this has not been without its lessons, but as far as how I'm going to move forward, what I'm going to do to survive, even within the next 72 hours, like, one thing I know for sure, like, when I go around my parents, because of the fact that they continue to say weird shit, I'm starting to wish them harm. Like, I recently noticed that my thoughts went from, like, occasionally feeling suicidal to thinking, like, if I buy a gun, I'm gonna shoot you first. And that's like, whoa, like, brakes, pump brakes, like, what? But one thing I can say is that this has been like a really great time in which I can give myself a pat on the back. It's been a huge marker for how far I've come. But again, I can't take credit for the things that I've done right. You know, it's a direct result of having worked the steps. And I'm just so bummed. Apple got my contacts deleted from my phone. The district attorney's office kind of owes me a favor, but I mean, I went to the Senate. They flew me out to speak on behalf of victims of crime years ago, but I don't have the DA's number anymore, and she's not the DA anymore anyway, but also, I don't have my old sponsor's number. She's someone that's popped into my head so many times because I'm just like, Marie, like, you'd be so proud of me. But, yeah, honestly, I don't feel super motivated to even go to a Zoom meeting. I've tried a few times, but after those very specific times when I was like desperate, so many times, probably like 6 different times, reached out to people in the program, reached out to people from the homeless shelter I worked at, like, never knocked on more doors in my life. I find myself just like giving up and not knowing what to do, and it's been crossing from a point of humbling to humiliating, and yeah, I don't know if there's anything I could say. Keep me in your prayers. I appreciate it. I actually found myself missing Poway, but city life's not really for me. I've done that. I'm just trying to write things out here and possibly get the heck out of San Diego. I don't really have friends here. I don't really have family anymore. And if anything, I've been trying to figure out a word to use other than family to describe my family to myself, because I'm someone that has routinely, regularly been showing up for my family for a long time, but I've literally had to stop for the sake of my own health. You know, I had 2 hands that no longer work, and I know that when I go back to my parents' house, because they're old, but they're still my parents, I will do things that aren't even to my benefit to help them out. But I've figured out a name for it. I suffer from compassion compulsion disorder, and we're creatures of habit. But my parents are also getting old. My siblings, they traveled the world. You know, they barbecued, they traveled, whatever. I can't change the things that they do or say, but one thing I can say is, like, I busted my ass to try to help my parents, and every fucking thing that I've done, Brenda, has actually either been ignored or, like, literally even counted against me. And the last thing I'll tell you is, like, literally, like, right after I moved back with my parents' house to my parents' house, like, 4 years ago, I fixed this lamp, or this what are those things called? I'm sure, a ceiling fan in the room that I sleep in. The ceiling fan, it had 4 light bulbs, 3 of which were out, and the fan would not stop rotating. And I'm like, okay, I've never fixed a ceiling fan before, but when I worked at Alpha Project, I became a plumber, the token translator on site, a therapist, like, you name it, I was doing it. There would be times when I would be the only one on property when there were like 6 to 8 people supposed to be there. But I'm super grateful I had the experience, because I am, like, so much more of a tomboy now. But I found out that I enjoy fixing things. So I was like, whatever, like, I've helped my parents out, whether they noticed or not. It's just also, I like to just see if I can try it and fix it. I'm a nerd, and I get off on lame, nerdy shit like that. I was able to track down light bulbs in their clusterfuck garage that I've since organized. and I was super stoked. I got all 4 of the light bulbs working, and I was going to make efforts to switch out the fan switch because I found like a replacement. The other one had broken off, and I went to like report my proud news to my mom, my parents. They were sitting and watching the evening news. And I was like, yeah, so I fixed the lamp and or the ceiling fan, and my mom turns to my dad and she goes, oh great, now she's gonna waste our electricity too.